Bob Parker's Fox Sports. Since you have a win at Advanced, do you do anything in this? Can you do anything in this practice session? Try anything to potentially kind of help overall Gibbs and Toyota try to figure out this tire?
I don't think so. I think everyone's kind of racing for themselves and their own agendas. Everyone's going to have, everyone within the team's probably got a little bit different agenda if you kind of look at the points position. So not really. We'll just focus on trying to win for us.
Okay, we'll go to Zach and then Davey.
Zach Sturniolo, NASCAR.com. Denny, what can you take from today's practice, if anything, and at what point do you feel like we're going to know what kind of tire we have? Is this going to be something where it's not until lap 50 of tomorrow's race that we actually have an idea? What's your anticipation on that?
Well, I think that the track's got some rubber already. I don't think there's been any rain since last night. No. So we've got some truck rubber up there, Xfinity in practice. That a few guys are starting to run it in. So I think if it wears in these conditions, then it will probably wear tomorrow. Your guess is as good as mine. I don't know. We'll just kind of wait and see. Certainly, we'll highly be anticipating what that first session does. It could be close to the same, or it could be entirely different. We just don't know. But I think whatever you have today, I don't see a dramatic shift in changing tomorrow.
Davey Siegel with Sirius XM. Does you guys having a win change your approach in terms of this weekend when you figure out what the tire's doing today? Like, do you and Chris have conversations on, well, maybe we can be a little bit more aggressive here or there and try to do something that you originally wouldn't because you have a win?
Not really. I think the risk probably changes from inside the car. I don't know that it changes a whole lot with setup. I mean, certainly it kind of depends on what happens with the practice, right? If there's a dramatic tire wear, certainly there's some setup things that you can do to make that better. But ultimately, you're trying to just get to lap 500 up front and with a shot. And I don't know that that changes a whole lot whether you have a win or not. I think everyone's going to try to make their car as fast as they can. And then you make setup decisions based off of the tire wear you see to try to make it last that long.
Okay, we're going to pause for a quick moment and go up to the press box. Tyler, do you have any questions up there?
No questions in the press box.
Thank you. All right, we'll come back down and go to John and then Lee.
John Newby, Savage Ventures. So from a competitor standpoint, when you have these unknowns with the tires, all this different stuff, is that exciting to you as opposed to just coming into the weekend going, it's just a standard Bristol race?
It certainly does. I think none of the teams have tested this tire that I know of. So there's been no tire test. We're all coming in this pretty cold, and so certainly feel like there's an opportunity there to create comers and goers. People that get the tire set up and those didn't. So certainly I think there's a higher level of anticipation because of that.
Lee Spencer, Sirius XM NASCAR Radio and CatchFence.com. Larson said on his Zoom this week that Darlington is a Gibbs track and Bristol is a Gibbs track. He just intimated Gateway is a Gibbs track, which we thought it was Penske, but nonetheless, do you kind of have that sense that you guys are so dominant now that wherever you go is a Gibbs track?
I mean, certainly we got a great shot at it. I feel as though that the Gibbs team in general doesn't have a weak track, but we had weak performances earlier in the year. If you look at Las Vegas, I don't think any of our cars were fast at that race. I can think of maybe one or two other races early in the season where we all kind of struggled, and they were typically tracks where we're pretty strong. And so I think we've hemmed that up a little bit to where we've identified some of the philosophies that we did that weren't exactly right. And so now, certainly every weekend we go there and one of the Gibbs cars should be in the top 3 or so in speed and have a shot to win.
And what do you remember when night fell on New Hampshire last year and it's raining and it's cold and, you know, how the track changed, how the dynamic of the race changed?
I'll be so honest with you, I don't remember the Loudon race from last year. Wasn't it like dry and then rain?
Right, it rained and then it got dark and cold and just all of a sudden, you know, with no lights, it was kind of a precarious spot.
At the very end though, right? Did we go back to dry? Yeah. Yeah, I don't have a great recollection of it. It's not part of my mindset totally quite yet. As far as like going back and learning track history and race history, certainly it's on the forefront of like our team and what we're focused on. But yeah, it's always an interesting track. But that was the first time I remember being on a higher speed oval. I guess we did it at Richmond not long ago, but a higher speed oval where it was, man, with these rain tires and the wet conditions, it was very, very sketchy from my standpoint. So I just hope that it stays dry from my point.
Denny, Doug Turnbull for Performance Racing Network. I wanted to ask you about, I think the PJ1 was, one driver told me it was reapplied today, and I noticed it being really dark on the bottom line. There's been so many questions about the tires. Do you anticipate that reacting any differently than it has in the past? I mean, it's normal that it's reapplied, I assume. So do you have any thoughts about how that could go?
Yeah, no, it looks very similar to what we've had here in past races in practice. Typically, as the race goes on, it'll go through a transition where it actually goes darker, and then it actually gets lighter by the end of the race as we start picking it up. So I'll be looking at the Xfinity race to see how that transition is going, but NASCAR on the track has said that they've applied it the same as they always had, and it looks very similar. So I wouldn't expect that to be one of the variables that we're chasing.
Dustin Long, NBC Sports. Denny, obviously last year you go into this race below the cut line. This year you don't have to worry about it. Is there any difference from how you went into last year's race compared to how you go into this year's race, in the sense of, I understand an athlete maybe treats every event the same. Is that how you can look at last year and this year, or was it really that different for you last year?
Well, it was definitely different. You know, I try to approach each week the same when it comes to my process. Now, certainly, your mind plays games with you, though. There's certainly a different mindset when you're locked in versus being below the cut or being near the cut. So, without a doubt, I'm resting much easier this year in the playoffs. In general, I'm way more loose with it. Whatever the results are, the results are. So that helps, and on top of that, winning, I mean, it just makes me even looser yet. But certainly, yes, anytime I go into a cut race and I'm close to the cut, I have to pull myself back to not thinking about the things that I don't control. And that's typically what I think drivers would say when they get in these scenarios where they're, facing elimination, is they worry about all the things they can't control. But man, it's certainly a different mindset.
How difficult is that, and how, as somebody as experienced as you, how challenging was that last year to not let those thoughts dominate too much, or maybe they did at times?
Yeah, I didn't let it dominate me for sure, but I just knew that we were good enough. There was one of the variables of whether you make cut lines or not is that, are you fast enough just on the merits, or do you need someone to not be as good as they normally are, and then you avoid trouble? Well, when you're fast, you just have to worry about the avoiding trouble part of it, not the and I hope we have speed. So it made it very easy for me last year to not have to worry about that, because I knew we're going to have one of those covered. The other part is the part that you typically worry about. And I would say for some near the cut line, I think some of them are probably thinking about, I hope I've got one of those two elements, and you need two to survive.
We'll take one last question from Zach.
As fast as this track is, as banked as it is, it seems like there's a lot of load that goes into this car at this track more than any other. How does that, what is that like from a mechanical standpoint? Because it just seems like there's more mechanical issues that can happen here and crop up here because there is more load on the car.
It does. You know, we saw it when Next Gen was first introduced. This was one of the tracks where there was a lot of mechanical failures, mostly in the steering components, and some in the suspension components. A lot of it is because the car loads up so quickly and so hardly at this track. So it's just it always has taken its toll, and I don't know how many races we've run here, but it always seems like there's at least one that the track or conditions is taking its toll on a car. But beyond that, the driver as well. I mean, 1,000 corners you got to run around this place, and you just don't get a whole lot of break on the straightaways because they're so short. So for sure, it takes its toll on all the above.